Well, that, by the way, was the voice of Brad in the Northland coming in off the top of the hour. May he rest in peace. And as we look at last night, the Kansas City Chiefs, of course, opening up the 2023 season as the Super Bowl champs always do on their home turf. And they lose the game to the Detroit Lions, 21-20 at Arrowhead last night. Not the outcome that obviously anybody wanted or that many expected, even without Travis Kelce and Chris Jones. Let's welcome on and say good morning to Kendall Gammon. Of course, you know him well. He's our Chiefs analyst here on KCMO. It's brought to you by Xfinity 10G, a revolutionary new network that will transform the way we all connect. Well, Kendall, when you look at that loss last night, where are you pointing the finger?
Well, ultimately, just the drops is what you can always point the finger at a lot of different things, but the obvious ones are the different drops. Kadarius Toney just didn't have a great night. I think had at least two drops, maybe three. And of course, the one hits him right in the hands and then it ends up going into the arms of the defender, and Detroit goes back for a pick six. I mean, when you look at the defense, you only hold a team to 14 points in a game. You did your job, quite honestly. Quite honestly, the offense, the defense, they all know that. Special teams got tricked up also on that, what was really a ballsy call by Detroit to take a fake punt when you're inside your own 30. And, of course, that turned into a touchdown drive as well. So when you looked at it, the one thing, to get back to your question, if there's one thing, it was the drops by both Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore.
Yeah. What about, yesterday you were talking about, and I think most would agree with you, that this offensive line you think is better this year. And not that this is the play or anything like that, but there were so many times on second and third and shorts where, whether it's going for end arounds or trying to be too cute, do you feel like the Chiefs were at times trying to be too cute on some of these short yardage plays last night?
I always find that an interesting question, and it's a good one, obviously, but those cute plays are considered genius plays when they work, and when they don't work, they're considered cute, and why didn't you just run the ball? That's generally how it's always been, not just this year and not just with Andy Reid. That's always been my interpretation of how things are, because Andy's they do a lot of different things that are kind of tricky at times and get the defense off balance, and that's what you're trying to do all the time. But again, when they don't work and they look out of the ordinary, I think that's the tendency. But to your initial point, yeah, I think the surge on the run game could maybe be a little bit better, but that is a good defense in Detroit. So I don't know. I thought the offense played pretty well. I'm really alluding to the pass protection for the most part. They did a good job with Patrick. I thought Patrick did a nice job staying in the pocket for as long as he needed to. Then he would escape. Really, you can point to all three sides of the ball that need to get better with some certain things. But again, I think the defense, if you're looking for a bright spot, there's a couple for sure. With number one, I think the defense played well. They could have done a few things differently, no doubt about it. But I like that. And, I mean, as Big Red said, there's no excuses. But the fact is, if you do have Travis Kelce in there, I think not only does that help in terms of he's going to get some catches and make some plays like he always does, like he always has, but also it's going to free up some other wide receivers to get more separation than they did last night, because that's one thing we didn't see much of.
Yeah, and, you're right when it ultimately comes down to the drops and the ball's right in Toney's hands and somehow it ends up in the end zone for the Lions. So what about Chris Jones? I mean, saw plenty of him on TV last night. He's wearing a blue hat of all things. Not sure if that was a coincidence or if he just grabbed the wrong one on the way out the door, but kind of awkward seeing him sitting there between his agents last night. I know we talked about it yesterday, but any different feelings in the wake of how last night played out and the fact that we did see a lot of them on TV?
I don't think it makes any difference at all. I was, of course, at the game, so I didn't see that part of it. But I don't think in my mind, this doesn't change anything with the Chiefs and where they're at with stuff. And it's going to be interesting to see, because I don't expect that you'll see the Chiefs blink. I mean, if he was looking for a bad defensive performance to sway sentiment and think that he needs to come back, I didn't see that, and I don't think it was going to be the case anyhow. So in my mind, his only option is either to take the deal, whatever it is on the table, them to figure something out real quickly, or get in here sooner than later, or otherwise that kind of deconstructs his future in terms of what he wants to do also. So I don't get it, honestly. I just it doesn't make sense to me. As we talked about it, yesterday, is he doesn't have leverage, in my opinion, and I don't think he ever did. And that's not to say he's not a great player, and it's not to say that the Chiefs wouldn't be better with him, because they absolutely would, and everybody knows that, including the folks that he's trying to get a quote raise from. But some things you dig your heels on.
Yeah, that's very true. So what about now? You've got kind of this mini bye when you play the first game on a Thursday. You're going to Jacksonville, a playoff team that, yes, they beat last year a week from Sunday. But how do you think Andy Reid and that coaching staff handle now this extended stretch here coming off of that loss last night?
Well, I'm sure he'll probably give them a little extra time off, because you normally do, and because the one big thing that you always want is your team to have their legs. You don't go after things extra and punish the team because they lost, and then it punishes them more by being more tired because they're practicing more. But they have more time this week to look at the film and see what they did wrong and try to make the correction. So get more into the mental side of the game. And I think the other message will be, and I can remember back in the days when I played for Coach Cowher, which I think these two are very similar, which is, what, in the end of the day, it's still just one game, and you can't dwell on it, and don't let the mistakes of something that just happened contribute and make something else happen bad as well. I mean, you've got to flush that from your system in terms of the fact that it's been a loss. Take the good from it in terms of the learning and get on, because you've got 16 more games this year.
And last thing, I mean, with the wide receivers last night and the drops and not having Kelsey, do you think if he's out, and not that we're expecting it, but if he is out for another couple of games, is this team, as much as there's talent at that position, are they too reliant from a leadership perspective on him making something happen at that position? And I'll call it the pass catching position versus calling him an official tight end. So how much does that factor into the equation, not having him, and what that does for the leadership or lack thereof at wide receiver?
That's an interesting question, Pete. I don't know about the leadership side of it, because he's still around and everything, but if he were to play. But ultimately what this is whether he's a tight end, whether he's a wide receiver, your number one receiver was out for the game. And if you were out for more, that makes a difference, because then defenses are able to key in on different guys and play different coverages that maybe they couldn't. So it affects it, I think, in the fact that, many times – when Kelsey's on the field, you have to figure out a way to bracket him maybe high with a safety and have somebody down low as well, and effectively double team him, which makes it easier for somebody somewhere. And if that was the case, and you've got an offensive line protecting Patrick Mahomes, giving him time, you would be successful with other wide receivers. So that's where I think it comes into play. The mental side of it, or the leadership side of it, I think he's still around, and I think he's still talking. So I don't see that quite as much when it comes to game day.
Well, Kendall, we will be talking to you a week from this morning, getting set for Jacksonville. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.
You bet. Take care, Pete.
All right. That is Kendall Gammon. Great to have him on KCMO. Unfortunately, having him on after that loss last night, geez.